plus size stores, so your Lane Bryant, a lot of articles I read said plus size women don't want to shop there because it's the more mom look, and that could use an update. And an opportunity is the movement called Plus Size Please. So it started by they're called fashionistas, so like plus size fashionistas blogs, and they go out into stores and they say, oh, that's a cute shirt, not sold in my size, take a photo of it, hashtag it, and it's like a worldwide database of clothes that women want and can't get at. So it's kind of just, they tag the designer, whoever makes it, and they're like, all these women want this is all the profit you're not getting. And that's kind of one opportunity there. Weaknesses, technological abilities in the situation. There is this thing called Fit Technology. It's like a body scanner, kind of like what you just see at an airport, but for clothing. It takes like 1,000 different images of your body and figures out what size would be best for you, and it helps create prints. Because a lot of companies don't produce plus size clothing because they say after size 14, everything's all distorted, it's not worth making. So this Fit Technology is supposed to make the pattern go on the fabric better, but it's, from what I've researched, incredibly expensive, and brands are saying if the plus size women don't buy my clothing, why am I going to pay to buy this technology? And then the lack of data for sizing. We're still using the sizing that was done in the mid-1900s, the sizing that they did all the way back then, and since then, more than half of women are now considered overweight, and back then wasn't the same percentage. So we're still making clothing for dated information. And strengths. So brands leading the movement. So we have Torrid. You guys know what Torrid is? So great brand. They're catering to teenagers and young women, they said they were determined to make clothing that you see on runways for plus size women, regardless of what anybody thinks. And there's a couple quotes from their CEO, and it says that we have a pretty interesting and self-assured group of young women now in our age group who don't come with the same baggage that was prevalent before. The girl herself isn't waiting to be accepted. She says, I like the top that Kim Kardashian is wearing, I'm going to get it, and I don't care if I'm a size 18. So that's kind of their motto, that this is what we're going to do, this is what we want, and we don't care what people think about it. You have brands like them. H&M did a line, a plus size line. Target has a plus size line, and Aerie's, the Aerie Real. So you have these kind of brands putting it out there that this is acceptable, we have customers that want it, and that no one else is kind of jumping along with it. Your plus size models, Ashley Graham, first plus size woman on the cover of Maxim and Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. She looks great. It's like positive advertising. There's nothing, I mean, people are saying awful things, but she's out there fighting the movement and doing the right things. Then you have your fashionista blogs. Your Curvy Fashionista, Curvy Girl Chic, and Girl with Curves. I looked them all up. They're absolutely fabulous. One thing I have in there, I don't know how I skipped it. Something else that they're missing is the sales. So I'm trying to think of the figures. From 2015, retail sales in the U.S. were $48 billion, and of that, 118 billion was for regular size clothing, and only 18 billion was for plus size clothing. So then you're saying that half the women in the United States are plus size, and they're only spending 18 billion out of the 348 billion. So you have all these women either buying regular size clothing, jamming their bodies into these tiny little clothes that aren't meant for them, or they're just not buying them at all. So you have a large section of women that we don't know what they're doing. because the clothes aren't out there for them. And then the last part is suggestions. Where should they go from here? The only thing that I can see is we need like a top brand or a top designer to jump on the bandwagon and do something about it. The information is there, the fit technology, the women want it. Everything they need is right there. They just, I don't know why they think it's not like a feasible thing to do. But that's my question for you guys. Does anyone have anything that you think can be done?
Well, Target is running an ad now with quite a diverse group of women running around. So there's an older person, there's, I think there are several ads actually. There's plus size model in a red dress.
Yeah, we have those in the store. We got putting on those billboards. But yeah, so brands like that are doing things. They're saying that we have the clothing for it, and then women are saying it's great. It's a little not quite what we wanted. More basics and more things like that. I get a lot of people complaining about it, but it's something, and I don't know. I think they just need a good kickstart because I don't think it's fair at all. I get a lot of people when I mean, any of my jobs when I'm there, they say the shirt's great. Why don't you have it for me? And it's like I feel, honest to God, I feel that I wish I could, give them what they feel they need to make themselves feel how they want to feel. So, anyone have any questions or?
I have a dress form that was a size 20, quote unquote. I think the sizing issue is the bigger elephant in the room when it comes to so-called plus size, because they don't cater to regular size women either. I understand that plus size models are going to do the same thing, but I feel like the value, the vanity model of sizing is what's making everybody feel like this is such a bigger issue than it needs to be. I think that the sizing needs to be really rather equated to realistic figures, to realistic sizes, realistic heights, realistic proportions, and we go from there. That's the only suggestion I make from that, because we're going based on something that was developed in the 1900s, which has obviously scaled up or down. So.
And then with men's sizing, I read an article where we're like, why are we one number when they can give men's pants, 4 numbers, or another one's only 2. They're like, they get so many different things to say who they are, and we get one big number slapped on us, and that's it, and that's who we are. So that's all.
Jean, would like to go next? Okay. So our next presenter is Jean Soto-Carrero, who is graduating, right? Almost graduating?
Kind of, yeah, barely.
She's taking a lot of credits this semester, I know. You're from Connecticut,
Yes.
and you're a TMD major, and you've worked some in the fashion industry, yeah? So she's going to be talking about Barbie, who is a doll we all know. Even I know Barbie, I had one of the earlier forms of Barbie coming up on the screen. We sold it at a yard sale, so stupid. Someone rushed in and bought all those dolls. Anyway, Jean is going to be speaking about Barbie moving towards diversity, because there have been some changes in Barbie in recent years.
You guys hear me? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to talk about diversity in dolls. and I guess specifically about kind of like one of America's most iconic dolls, Barbie doll, and kind of her evolution towards diversity. So I'm going to specifically talk about this in regards to race, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, her body image recently, and then also the disabilities. So I guess I'll start with the history of Barbie. So Barbie kind of originated from two other dolls. She had an American descent from the Madame Alexander Sissy doll, which was in 1955, and that was noted as the first teenage doll. So it was the first doll with a mature figure. Prior to that, young girls would just play with baby dolls. And so that Madame Alexander's Sissy doll had kind of like molded breasts. She had feet that she could wear high-heeled shoes, and then also she had a ready-made wardrobes that mirrored the fashion trends of the 1950s. This actually is really interesting as well too. Barbie had a German descent from a Lily doll in 1955. So this doll was actually fashioned after a prostitute and was like a toy for men. It was kind of sold in German bars and tobacco shops, and she kind of just like a sexy figure that had like an hourglass figure and like really little clothing, and kind of was just kind of used for given to men would give it to each other as gifts as like at bachelor parties and stuff. But so Ruth Handel is the creator of Barbie, and she started Mattel Toy Company a couple years before they launched Barbie, and she was inspired by the Lily doll's adult woman figure that she said could show off grown-up clothes for dolls, and she came across this doll when she was visiting Germany, and she saw her daughter that was really interested actually in playing with paper adult dolls, and rather than the baby dolls that people had before done that. And so when they created the Barbie, they actually used an identical body to that of the German Lily doll. So in 1959, that is when Mattel launched the first Barbie doll at the American International Toy Fair in New York, and you can see her body is pretty much exactly, I guess, resembling the Lily doll. She had red puckered lips, she had blue eyeshadow, and her eyes actually were adjusted so that they would have a sideways glance when she was first introduced in 1959. She also had a signature top knot ponytail, and she came in blonde and brunette, but that was the only variation. So the Western ideal. So basically, the first Barbie was pretty much, her appearance was supposed to reflect that of the ideal Western woman of the 1950s, with pale ivory skin, long slim legs, and a narrow waist and hips. Her wardrobe also reflected that of the ideal woman during the 1950s, and with the high fashion and style trends. But Mattel Toy Company marketed Barbie as a teenage fashion model, and it was immediately successful, and they sold over 350,000 Barbies in the first year. So the next year in 1960, this is when Barbie, Mattel kind of, I guess, began their evolution towards diversity, so they only really expanded it, Barbie, to have one other hair color, and that was a Tahitian red, and a new hair style as well. So this was actually bubble cut that was popularized by First Lady Jackie Kennedy. So then in 1961, they introduced Ken Carson, which is supposed to be the iconic Barbie's boyfriend. And he was supposed to kind of represent the ideal man of this time. And a quote that I found was, Ken could not sidestep his crucial function of representing heterosexual maleness. So when Ken was pretty much introduced, he was introduced to fulfill that need of being Barbie's boyfriend. And that was also symbolic to the social norms of American society during this time. So in early Barbie, when she first started becoming a little bit more diverse too, I thought this was interesting because it was very conflicting, and that did also reflect women's conflicting roles in American society during this time as well. So in 1963, Mattel launched the first a Barbie astronaut, and that was followed by the first female astronaut that was introduced in 1963. And also conversely, Mattel also launched Slumber Party Barbie, and this Barbie was a Barbie doll that had accessories of like a small plastic scale that permanently was set to 110 pounds. And also it came with a diet book that said how to like lose weight, and the only advice in the book was don't eat. And this is the same. Barbie's lack of diversity kind of was conflicted with the civil rights movements and the Black Power movements of the 1960s. So in 1967, following like the Chicago riots and the death of Martin Luther King Jr., Mattel Toy Company introduced Colored Francie. And this doll kind of lacked the correct ethnic features. Mattel actually used the exact same molds for the Caucasian Barbie dolls as they did for the new Colored Francie, and there really was no distinction other than the color. They also launched in 1968 Christy, which was Barbie's. So then in 1970s, with the women's movement, like gender roles also evolving, Barbie started to evolve more towards diversity, reflecting that as well. So in 1970, this is just a picture from the National Organization for Women that staged a fight just towards more equality, and actually people were carrying a sign saying, "I'm not a Barbie doll." In 1971, this was pretty revolutionary, because this was actually the first time that Barbie's eyes faced forward with their Malibu Barbie. And so now that kind of was reflecting women gaining more independence and equality in the women's rights movement. So in the 1980s, diversity increased with Barbie dolls. The original Barbie from 1959, like, no longer really fit the ideal role model for young girls, and if Mattel wanted to stay relevant in American society, then they had to diversify the Barbie line. So they came up with this Dolls of the Worlds collection, and they launched that in 1980, and it was to reflect the typical national attributes and dress of a bunch of countries around the world. But there actually was a lot of controversy about that, because it was really debatable how authentically the dolls really did represent diversity, because they did have the same mold as the original Barbie. But in 1981, this was when the first African-American Barbie with ethnic features was launched, and she had fuller lips, a little wider nose, and more pronounced cheekbones, but still you could see it's very minimal difference. And then in 1983, that was when the first African-American Ken doll was introduced as well. So in 1988, that was when the first Hispanic Barbie was introduced, Teresa, and she was very stereotypically dressed, in a white blouse, and she had a red full skirt and a red rose that was tied behind her ear. But she really did lack like any characteristics that would differentiate her as having like Latin descent rather than non-ethnic original Barbie. So basically just the Barbies up until this time were still basically marketed as different versions of the original Barbie doll. So diversity also grew in terms of like the working woman. So the 1980s, there was a lot of career-themed dolls for Barbie. There's a right there, even like a McDonald's waitress and stuff like that. And this also reflected kind of how the changing roles in society of women as well. So during this time, according to the U.S. Commerce Department, that in 1980 there was like about half American women were working now, and that was 14% up since 1960, 20 years ago when they first separated. So in 1990s, Barbie kind of continued to evolve. I guess she started to change her role more so, I guess, to reflect the first female candidate VP candidate in American history, Mattel launched a Barbie, and that was supposed to be like the same presidential. So in 1997, Barbie expanded, and they had a new friend that was in a wheelchair that was introduced. But there's actually a lot of controversy about this because the Cher Smile Becky, her wheelchair didn't fit in the elevator of the Barbie dream house, and since then Mattel said that they were going to redesign the Barbie dream house, but nothing has happened since then. So this actually is really interesting too. In 1997 there was an Oreo Fun Barbie, and this was a controversy that happened. I guess they were doing this cross promotion with Oreo, and Barbie dolls were available in white and black versions just since 1980, but they had to recall a bunch of the Barbies, all of them pretty much, because they said that Oreo was a derogatory term used to belittle someone seeming like black on the outside and white on the inside, and that caused an uproar for the doll in 1987. So for Barbie's 40th anniversary in 1999, even though she did have some controversy, Mattel did, when they were trying to expand for diversity, but in 1999 their sales were the highest that they've been. But in 2000, this was the first year that Barbie had some serious competition after they had kind of pretty much maintained 90% of the doll market share, and that was Bratz. So Bratz were introduced, they were designed to be more reflective of teenagers in society now, and rather than like the ideological perception of women in the 1950s, such as like the original Barbie. But like Barbie, Bratz dolls were indicative to trends in society. So how they had a bunch of different fashions and fashion styles was also mirroring the choices that women had too. And then in 2006, Bratz became the '1 selling doll, and Barbie was bumped to #2. So in 2003, Barbie was actually banned from by Saudi Arabia's Committee for the Propagation of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. So they deemed Barbie as an kind of un-Islamic, representing Western immorality, and that was a huge controversy. So in addition to that, that also led to the sale of decline of Barbie sales, and it was an incentive for Mattel Toy Company, if they wanted to stay relevant, to expand diversity and increase diversity, because clearly they were not as relevant to young girls anymore. So Barbie, 57 years old. So even now, a big thing also is her body image that has always been controversial since 1959 when she first debuted. But they say that her body is responsible for the development of like poor body images in girls with unrealistic proportions, and but in 2014 they actually expanded this to the Lamely doll, and that was launched by Mattel. It was the first Barbie doll to use like realistic body shape and proportions on its design, and it came with like acne stickers, bruise stickers, cellulite stickers you could put all over the Lamely doll. And then it was interesting that 2 years later they made a male version as well. So Barbie's evolution towards diversity. So now in 2015, that's when they did a huge change in their marketing, and they launched 23 new dolls with like 8 different skin tones, and then in 2016 they added 3 more dolls to this collection, and it was more realistic body shape options. They had a petite Barbie, a tall Barbie, a curvy Barbie, different hairstyles, even blue hair, and different types of skin tones as well, and facial shapes. So I thought that this was interesting, talking about how Barbie's new body and how it's the 21st century American popular culture. So I think that Barbie's ideal image in 1959, obviously, American ideals of beauty have evolved since then, and now the new Barbie types are a reflection of the 21st century American pop culture. So you see like Beyonce and Kim Kardashian, which are both big icons. They're kind of fueling this like movement towards body acceptance and more realistic body images. This also is interesting too. This was recent in 2016, so this was supposed to be, quote, the first lesbian Barbie doll that was modeled after a soccer player, and I thought that was Abby Wambach, and I thought that was really interesting too. It's gotten a lot of positive publicity as well, and I think that this will definitely continue. So then, America's most iconic Barbie doll still is, now it generates over $1 billion in sales. They are top over Bratz dolls now, but they have marketed and globalized into 150 countries all around the world, and that is really important for them to be diverse, especially because 92% of girls have a Barbie doll and grow up with that Barbie doll. And I thought this is just really interesting from 1959 and how different it's changed since 2016, and how in 1959 it was the ideal of the Western woman, but now it's more of a reflection of what we see in society, and it's kind of showing that evolution towards diversity. I thought Barbie in the future, they've changed her face a lot. Mattel has focused on trying to be inclusionary rather than exclusionary, but Barbie has really been a symbol of females' role of the evolution in American history, but there definitely is room for improvement. And I was saying just predictions for the future. I was trying to think of some ways that how Barbie has really reflected the roles of women in society and young girls, and how I know right now in North Carolina there's the state law that's requiring for transgender people with the bathrooms, and I'm wondering if maybe that's going to be something that Mattel wants to capitalize in the future. But I'm sure there's other ones too. And
Questions, comments?
I could ask a question.
this is my easy.
What is the difference between the uprise of the Bratz versus Barbie, when they're basically selling the same thing? But Bratz have what, fuller features and more
Yeah.
exaggerated features?
Yeah, that, and also just they were completely, like, just their introduction to was just way more diverse. Even their like hip kind of clothes, fashion, trendy clothes, and they kind of made their ethnic features really trendy. So I guess they were modeled more of the preteens, and that's their target.
I think this is a really interesting and important topic, and I think it has been for a while. And hasn't like Barbie recently come out with like an occupational like ad to like advertise like, I don't know, more diversity in like the professional field too? For,
I know actually that there was a, like in 2012, I think they did another presidential one, and that was actually came out with a Caucasian, a Asian, and African American, and I don't remember what the last one, but it was 4 girls, different ethnicities, and but it was just the same type of thing. They did an entrepreneurship one, I
Yeah.
think, as well too,
Yeah.
in 2014.
I think that's one I remember, and I remember it being, I don't know, I was just like kind of proud of the
Yeah.
industry for like doing that. So
I mean, I think there definitely is a lot of room for improvement, and it was kind of hard just because there's so much information on Barbies, but it was really interesting to just make those connections with seeing how she kind of did reflect society, and like how our different roles for women and men to gender in terms of everything, she reflected it.
Okay, so I have 3 people on the docket here. Emma, Danielle, or
I feel you, like, when.
So Danielle Vachon is a TMD major, right?
Yep.
And she's been very interested in the wedding industry. So taking that interest in this class, she decided to focus on same-sex weddings and what people chose to wear at same-sex weddings.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I'm Danielle, and exactly what she just said. I'm very, very interested in weddings, and I was trying to think how I could do my project on weddings. And at first, I was looking at different cultures, and that wasn't diverse enough, so I definitely wanted to go and look into same-sex weddings. And it's important to first start with the history. So the movement for gay marriage is one of the most successful in history. It took it was a long journey, but towards 2015, it took no time for the American public to convince the Supreme Court that it is just basic rights. The first state to approve gay marriage was Massachusetts in 2003. They were a more liberal state compared to the rest, but soon, and a few followed, including Connecticut, Iowa, New Hampshire. California approved it in 2008, but then later had some controversy and then finally approved it in 2013. New York, New Jersey. And then in 2015, the government passed a statewide law to allow gay marriage. In the U.S.'s Supreme Court, Obergefell versus Hodges. And this is just a quote from Justice Kennedy, who was on the case. He said, "They asked for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right." So first, I think before I get into same-sex weddings, we have to talk about fashion identity. And how you identify yourself is fully influences how you dress. And what you wear is how you express yourself as a person. And you want to be able to reflect yourself on your wedding day. So I am going to go through the next part a little fast because it does reflect a lot of what Raoul Fournier talked to us about in the Hanky Code, how different gay men identify themselves and their different archetypes as well as lesbians as well. So I'm going to start with the dandy and fairy. They tend to be thin and act more feminine than other homosexual men. They're well-dressed, pristine, manicured, and maintained, and they wear makeup. They like to appear young, even if they're old. We have the bears. They're the large, hairy, and often have a lot of facial hair. They're generally an older subset, and they came around the 1980s. The Circus Boys / the Clones, they're a more masculine archetype. You tend to see them and not know they are homosexuals right away. And they came around in the 1970s. They're commonly white, and they're huge into nightlife. The Leatherman is one of the biggest stereotypes in homosexual culture. It emerged from biker culture, and obviously they wear all leather. They consider themselves an exclusive subculture, and they dress based on their sexual fetishes. And then you have the artsy gay, which is stereotyped to be thin, tattooed, and have facial hair. They generally are painters, photographers, fashion designers. They are fashionable yet thrown together, meaning that they just wear a lot of designer clothes, but they kind of just throw it together because they have a busy life. And then another one that I threw in there that Rule did not is drag queens. This is a very small but powerful contingent of the gay community. They dress feminine, often in women's clothing, and they wear makeup, wigs, accessories, and create a whole other identity for themselves. And then we move into lesbian culture, where there's the butch, which they dress and act masculine. They commonly have short hair, and this is just an example from Orange is the New Black, Lea DeLaria. And then you have the boy babe, which is not to be confused with the butch. A lot of the time, they will dress more masculine, but in delicate collared clothing. But they have a lot more soft feminine attitude. And a good example of this is Ellen DeGeneres. And then you have the lipstick lesbian, which dresses and acts feminine and has traditional feminine style. So going to same-sex weddings, a big part is planning the wedding, obviously. The logistics of planning a gay or lesbian wedding ceremony are a little different than heterosexual. This is just because heterosexual weddings have centuries of etiquette that they can go back and look into, and they have guides to follow. So gay and lesbian couples kind of have an advantage because they can kind of make it up as they go along if they really wanted to, because there's no looming rules or traditions that they have to follow. So just some questions that arise with any wedding, but specifically to gay and lesbian same-sex weddings, is who will sit where, how do the brides or grooms get down the aisle, like if their mother, father, friend is going to walk them down the aisle, who's going to participate in the ceremony, what should the officiant say instead of "I now pronounce you husband and wife," and these are all things that the couple can decide on together, because nothing's written in stone. But most importantly, how should two brides or two grooms dress? So this is just a book that I found, Getting Groomed, the Ultimate Wedding Planner for Gay Grooms. It's by Jason Mitchell. He's a wedding planner at Cherie's Events in New York City. He's happily married and talks about his same-sex wedding within the book. And this is one of the first books published catering to same-sex weddings. He is quoted saying specific advice for grooms, and he says, "I've seen several looks for gay weddings. I've seen gay grooms who are identical from head to toe in matching attire but with different accessories, in separate outfits with similar tones, and those who honor a traditional wedding palette by having one groom wear black and another wear white." So this is just going off the idea that you can kind of do whatever you want, and it's really, really up to the couple. But there are some traditions that they tend to still follow, because even though homosexual culture is different than heterosexual culture, they kind of grew up in a heterosexual world where they weren't quite accepted yet. So the traditions that heterosexual weddings followed, they kind of had that nailed into their morals. So they kind of want to follow along the same role. He was also quoted saying, "Your wedding fashion is a chance to let your personality shine. Celebrate both the difference and sameness of the two of you, and further the overall design of your event. Remember, you are the stars of the night, and don't be afraid to go a bit bolder than you normally look. Be wary of your options to resemble costumes unless that's a deliberate choice." So again, that's just him being quoted just saying you can do pretty much whatever you'd like. And that was a theme that I really found throughout all of my research was everyone was like, "Oh, you might as well do whatever you'd like because you guys are kind of setting the standards for the future." He also says, as for brides, there are a few ways to go about getting dressed up. One is to go Ellen DeGeneres, Portia de Rossi route and choose a feminine suit and a wedding dress. Another is to wear two dresses. Just make sure they're not the same dress if you don't go shopping together. Two sharply tailored suits will also look festive. So that's where you can find a lot of diversity, I think, is in lesbian weddings, because right now, at least, there isn't a big market for dresses fitted for men. And so they have a lot less options. Women, however, can get tailored into a men's tuxedo or suit, and they can have that reflect in certain ways. So when you look at a lesbian wedding, there's a lot more options where two people can wear a more masculine suit, or one can wear a dress and one can wear a suit, or they can both wear dresses as well. Other opinions, so Isaac Mizrahi, who is he? He designed an 18-piece collection for Kleinfeld, and if you guys don't know Kleinfeld, it's the wedding store on Say Yes to the Dress, and they carry only designer gowns, and as you probably know, they go by appointment. He himself is coming up on his first wedding anniversary this year, so he had, after New York City granted rights for gays to be able to get married, he got married right away. And his advice is, if you're a lesbian, you're looking for a big bridal dress, you would do the exact same thing as a straight woman looking for a bridal dress. There is no difference. If you're a gay man looking for a fabulous tuxedo, you would do the same thing that a straight man would. If you're transgender or drag queen, that's a whole nother story. That's when I'd say there should be a whole bridal thing for them. They would go about it the same way too. It would just be more fitting. I don't really see a difference. And that's the biggest thing, is everyone can kind of shop the same. Even lesbians going to look for a suit or tuxedo, they can get fitted into that. But when it comes to transgender or drag queen dress, there's not really a big market in that. But there also aren't a lot of noted drag queen weddings either. So as they become more a prominent part of the gay community, my question is, will they section off a piece of the industry or for the market for them? So here are just some examples of same-sex weddings going through. There's a great same-sex wedding magazine just called Brides, featuring both gay and lesbian couples. This is just a couple in a vineyard, and it just shows their outfits. So they did opposite. So one's wearing a gray suit and one is wearing a navy suit, and then they wear the opposite ties. This is something common that you'll see in gay weddings, just because they want to find a way to match but not be wearing the exact same outfit. Here, however, they are wearing the same outfit. You'll find that a lot in older men. This is actually in Dallas, Texas. There are other photos as well of them at the ceremony. They're actually both wearing cowboy boots, and they were wearing cowboy hats as well, so they're kind of having fun with it. As you can see, they're still wearing the traditional colors of black and white. I found that a lot of couples did still stick with the black and white, even if they were both wearing suits or they were wearing a dress and a suit, which I thought was interesting, because in where they can really do whatever they want, and where we see now heterosexual weddings even doing a lot with color and not sticking to the traditional wedding dress, it really did surprise me that even in same-sex weddings they didn't go out of the box more. Here's an example of a lesbian wedding where one is wearing a vest and then the other is wearing a dress. She's wearing a headpiece instead of a veil, which I thought was interesting. And here she's not wearing a full suit. But at the same time, as I was looking through everything, it's one of those things where whether it's a same-sex wedding or it's a heterosexual wedding, some weddings are more casual than others, some are fancier than others. And this, I just feel as though since it was outside and during the day, it was a lot more casual of a wedding. Here, she's wearing an elbow-length veil, which the veil was something I looked into a lot, and I found that no matter what, if there was a use of a veil, it was only on one partner, even if they were both wearing dresses. Here I show same thing. They wanted to stick with the tradition of walking down the aisle and then unveiling the face of the bride on one person, even though they were both women. And I thought it was interesting that even wearing both dresses, they still had one person wearing a veil. And this is just my last example. It's an elopement, so it's just funny seeing a very casual wedding. She's just in a loose button-up shirt and she has a little fur cardigan on. So this is kind of more what I was expecting with the anything goes kind of thing, less formal. So I included in here too the white wedding, because traditionally a white wedding dress was a sign of purity and virginity. In modern times, people will still wear a white wedding dress whether or not it applies to them. And I thought this is kind of a strong statement because it kind of shows where we are today as well. We don't stick to the same etiquette as we used to. And that just shows how forward we're looking, I think, as well. And it really shows that color does not seem to matter. And I saw a lot of grays and light blues when looking through different photos for same-sex weddings. But I also saw a lot of black and white, and I think that's just them sticking to what they know as far as weddings that they grew up seeing in the past. So in conclusion, same-sex wedding dress is completely determined by individual people. No matter what the gender of the person is, it's what they wear at their wedding is completely determined whether they identify as masculine or feminine. A masculine person would wear a tuxedo or vest of some kind, at least until the industry evolves from that. A feminine person will tend to wear a dress if they are a woman or identify as a drag queen. However, drag queens are a small portion of the gay community. Veils are still used, mostly in the case of lesbian weddings, but it is rare that both partners will wear a veil. And sometimes they aren't used at all. And the biggest point is the only difference between same-sex weddings and heterosexual weddings is the two people getting married are the same sex. So pretty much there isn't a market for them right now, but for the most part they're able to find everything they need for their wedding. It's just how they determine how they want to celebrate their day. Same-sex weddings tend to stay close with traditions of heterosexual weddings because that is what they've grown up knowing what a wedding is traditionally like. Just because their sexual orientation is different doesn't mean that they want to completely change traditions of how wedding ceremony is done. What they choose to wear is individual to personality, style, and culture. And just looking to the future, I just have like a couple questions that I ended with is it necessary to have a separate part of the wedding industry for same-sex couples? Or do you think there will be a wedding market for drag queens and transgenders? And do you think that same-sex marriage will develop their own traditions or stick with the ones we know as somewhat traditional wedding today? If anyone has an opinion on that too.
I see a future for you as a wedding planner.
Yeah.
For same-sex couples, it's probably a need in the industry at this point.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I found a lot of, I went more into it in my paper, but I found there were a lot of wedding planners that did strictly do same-sex weddings as well. But they, again, said it was very, very individual to the couple, what they wanted to do. And some people have fun with it, some people like to stick to it. I think it has a lot of family influence on it as well. If they come from a more traditional family, they'll tend to have a more traditional wedding and they'll dress more traditionally. But like I said before, like even watching Say Yes to the Dress and stuff like that, even with heterosexual weddings, you'll see brides that wear non-traditional dresses, whether they're a color or a corseted, anything like that. I think looking forward in times, there's going to be less set in stone rules for weddings, and I think that's going to be the same trend going into same-sex weddings as well.
good stuff, so.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Shamrock, do you have yours on a thumb drive?
I have it on my computer.
I'm going to do it on YouTube. Everybody get up and stretch. We have a little time going on.
Little
this.
life
What?
How's your paper going? Did that help you? Yeah. I really don't want to do Carl's paper. Me neither. And I got a 45 on it. I'm just nervous because I got a 48 on last one and like I really need to do something good on the pilot. None of them make sense. Literally the first one didn't even make sense. I'm surprised you guys said it. Like how? How did you do that? Like how? I don't know, that's not like good. Yeah, but like it's better than a 48. Like, how do you get a 48? I'm like a good writer. So. I don't understand. Yeah. This paper, I'm gonna get literally, it's like, I need to do good on that one because I got a 60 on that test. Yeah. I made flashcards though for this one too, to send them to you. I haven't studied, but I made the flashcards yesterday because I thought the exam was today. But now I'm prepared.
No, the first time, but then like,
Like I actually don't really know.
Maybe because we weren't, yeah.
I'd rather go with
So our next presenter is Aisha Clements. She is from Newport, right? And she works at TJ Maxx, where I see her sometimes. So she's been in the industry for a couple of years working there. And her talk today is on model society, the lack of diversity in fashion models, which is another great topic.
Thank you. Hi guys, I'm Asia and I'm going to be talking about the lack of diversity in fashion modeling and specifically with African Americans. As of July 1st, 2015, African Americans make up approximately 13% of the United States population, while whites make up approximately 77%. And with this demographic between African Americans and whites, it already makes it difficult for African Americans to be as equally involved in the modeling industry when there aren't as many with the population. And African Americans have been included much more within advertisements, marketing, and magazine covers. However, a lack of inclusion still remains. When watching fashion shows or looking at ads, majority of the times the models that you see within them will be white. And African Americans continue to be neglected within the modeling industry for reasons such as their skin is too dark or their figures are too curvaceous in regards to women. And it's a type of ignorance with the fashion industry. They simply don't want to put African Americans into their labels or advertisements for reasons such as that. And they believe their sales won't be as high because of those reasons. And this causes agencies to only hire whites as opposed to African Americans, or if they do hire African Americans, a lot of times they'll have white features, they won't be as curvaceous, or they'll have fair skin tone. And African Americans have made advancements in their equality within the modeling industry in recent years. However, these advancements are only a preamble to the actions that need to be addressed about the neglection of African Americans in the modeling industry. In a 2007 issue of Jet magazine that is specifically devoted to African Americans, my parents were in it one time for their work. My mom wanted me to tell you guys that. it published an article with Naomi Campbell, and she discussed her experiences with bias against African Americans in the modeling industry on a panel of her and other judges at Bryant Park in New York. And it was specifically called "The Lack of Black Images in Fashion Today." And the question that sparked up her conversation was, in an industry supposedly dictated by beauty and style, why are certain groups granted limited access? And she spoke off of the African American community, and she talked about how she would often get gigs and jobs. However, a lot of the times it would be only because fellow associates would tell designers, like, hey, we're going to be in the show, we're not going to do it unless Naomi is in it too. And she also talked about how African Americans are only given attention during African American History Month, only in February. And that statement suggests that they only receive that attention only during that short period as opposed to year-round. And Beth Ann Hardison was also on the panel of judges, and she included certain scenarios regarding African American, the modeling industry, and she talked about how African American models and designers aren't really sensitive to the shortage of the diversity with African Americans in the industry. And she also talked about how celebrities that become involved in the industry don't necessarily know what current models went through to become a part of the industry, and also how they became celebrities in the first place. And another person who discussed issues with African American history and Black History Month was Morgan Freeman in his 60 Minutes interview with Mike Wallace. And he stated that, in his opinion, he feels that Black History Month is ridiculous because it only highlights African American history as opposed to it being American history, because it is American history. And he asked his interviewer if he wanted a Jewish History Month, and he said no. And he asked him why. He said, because it's silly. And he said, exactly. And he felt that Black History Month highlighted racism because people identify with their skin tone as opposed to who they are. He made the comment, like, I identify you as Mike and me as Morgan. I don't identify you as white and me as black. Another person who brought up the issue with fashion modeling was Bill Cosby. And he touched upon a segment that was on ABC News that was called, "Is the Fashion Runway Racist?" And the reporter discussed the lack of African Americans, specifically in 2008 Fashion Week in New York City. And the Italian Vogue editor, Franca Sozzani, apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, she identified that there was a lack of diversity on the runway. And she agreed that all the models were predominantly white, and the white models looked like each other. And she also made the connection between politics and how, even though Barack Obama was coming into office and being in office at that time, there was still a lack of African American models. And talk a little about the history. In 1976, Yves Saint Laurent created a collection inspired by ballet russes, apologize if I said it correctly, and it displayed the appreciation for the exoticism of other races and cultures. And it was noted that Yves Saint Laurent is known to have iconic images with models and garments. However, within those images, majority of the models will be white and not African American. And in 1997, Galliano's creation of the African-inspired beaded corsets for Dior were not only modeled by African Americans, but were also displayed. They also displayed the pride within and for African culture. And this was one of the garments. and we're going to talk a little bit about the appreciation for the culture. And African Americans and other races have began to rise within the modeling industry. However, there is still a lack of them used within photo shoots, and many of the photo shoots that they are used in, it'll be exotic themed and also planned by whites. And during the 20th century, there were few well-known African American models, and many of the African American models that were able to become a part of the fashion modeling world were chosen due to their fair skin. And in this time period, there was much concern that African American faces wouldn't sell magazines or any type of product if their faces were on it. And it was interesting to see this because rather than simply hiring an African American model or any other minority into advertising and runway shows and things like that, there needed to be an understanding and not just like, oh, let's hire a model that's black. There was a lack of understanding of the issue that African American models had just as much of a right to be included as any other race alongside whites. And there continues to be some skepticism with the capability of selling products with African American faces on the cover, and Brazilian African American models have the same issues. And the owner of Agência Noir, has staged blackouts outside of fashion shows because they lack diversity within their shows. And as mentioned before, African American models aren't as often seen on covers, and they think that they won't sell as well. However, you can see Beyonce or Rihanna on the cover of Vogue, and they'll sell millions of copies. And during the 1970s, fashion was a form of expression of African American culture and fashion. And integration was gradually occurring with young people, and they didn't want to allow the racism to overcome how they should express themselves in regards to their clothing. And much of their clothing would give off the manifestation of how they felt, saying, I'm black and I'm proud, and not really caring what other people thought about it. And by dressing a certain way, they supported their particular ideas and messages, such as the rebellions that were occurring during that time, and the radical approaches of activism, and were making statements that they supported the African American beauty and that they were in fact beautiful by wearing their hair in afros, as you can see on the far right picture. And celebrity influences such as Run DMC were also in that time period, where you could wear sunglasses indoors and think you were cute, and fitted jeans and the Adidas clothing. And in 2008, the Italian Vogue created a magazine that was outside of their norm, and it was included all African American models, and it was approximately 100 pages, and included models such as Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell, and that middle picture is one of the covers from it. And Sozani, the editor, was aware of the lack of diversity, and she wanted to create this issue to promote the African American beauty and culture. And in 2014, and according to this bottom left photo, Rick Owens' spring fashion show included African American step dancers from college, and they danced throughout the whole show. And here's a picture of some Run DMC fashion. Got my Jeeps on today. It was a coincidence, I didn't know on purpose. And consumers play a big role within the lack of diversity, and they perceive it. I took it upon myself to interview two of my friends and ask them a few questions what they thought. They are African American, but they aren't TMD majors like us. They don't get into like fashion shows as much, but like we watched the Victoria's Secret fashion show together and stuff like that. So I asked them what their take on it was, and they were aware that there was a lack of African American models within the industry. And one of my friends noted that within advertisements, there's only like 1 or 2 black models. You won't see that many. It's kind of like, let's stick them in here to make it look like they're a part of it. And one of my other friends noted that a lot of times African Americans are depicted in exotic themes. I remember one advertisement we had talked about was, I can't remember who it was, but it was a female model, and she was like in the jungle, and she was like with a cheetah. And also they're depicted in like urban settings, and which can be considered like questionable and stereotypical because African Americans are sometimes put in with the urban setting. And going off of controversy, in LeBron James's cover for Vogue in 2008, he was photographed with Gisele Bündchen and appeared to be yelling and aggressive, as you can see in the far right picture, and was connected with her at the hip. And this cover was deemed racially insensitive because readers claimed that he appeared to be in a gorilla-type pose, which arose the idea of the dangerous black man. And African Americans are often portrayed, specifically men, as beastly, while whites can be photographed mainly smiling or laughing. And former NBA star Charles Barkley in the middle picture was depicted breaking free of neck and wrist shackles on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which was also deemed racially insensitive, along with Dennis Rodman's cover for Rolling Stone, which he was shown with horns poking out of his forehead and his tongue hanging out. And these aggressive and threatening images reinforce the idea of criminalization of African Americans, and they also hinder the minds of the children that see these images because they associate African Americans with animals or criminalization, and they believe that this can be the representation of their culture when it's not. And in conclusion, in the 20th century, African Americans were not included as much in the fashion modeling industry, and since then there has been much effort made to increase the amount within the industry. Although there has been much effort, there is still room for improvement, which is essential for continuous equality amongst all cultures. And celebrities have been included on renowned magazine covers, yet there still remains a shortage of African Americans, and the action of the lack of African Americans causes readers to consider that they are being included more. However, they're not if the same celebrity is reoccurring on the magazine cover. Such magazines like Essence and Jet, as you can see here, are magazines that devote the portrayal of African Americans. And in the 2015 Fashion Week, a little bit of statistics for you, African Americans were very highly unrepresented. In 373 shows, there were 9,926 models between New York, London, Paris, and Milan, and almost 80% of the models on the runway were white. African American models accounted for 8.5%, while Asians accounted for 7.7%, and Latinas 2.6%. And there's been a slight improvement with the amount of how many African American models are included. In spring 2014, African American models accounted for 6.8%, while in fall 2015, 7.4% of models were African American. And this past fall Fashion Week included the highest diversity amount of African Americans, which was 8.5%. And with the continuous lack of African Americans within the fashion modeling industry, both providers and readers need to identify the problem in order to actually fix it, rather than just taking African American models and putting them into things and making it's seen that the problem has been solved when it hasn't. A sense of education really needs to happen so that people understand that there is in fact a lack of African American models, even though that there may not be as many in the population as whites, but it's still a problem that people need to identify so that it can be fixed.
That is my opinion.
I'm open to questions.
Italian books, does that come out annually? The black issue? I believe it's once a year.
I don't see it that often. I want to say it is annually.
Okay. With that being said, do you think that has a connection with the 1 month a year, Black History Month and stuff like that? Because Italian Vogue's out year round, but the black issue is only once a year.
I think that there can be a connection because it's not as reoccurring as the regular Vogue issue, along with Black History Month, how it is only once a year. And I'm curious to know if they actually did make it reoccurring, like who would be on the cover.
Right.
Anybody else? I don't buy the promise.
I've heard of instances where they will lighten the shade of an African American woman in a magazine photo. Did you find anything about that?
I didn't look into that specifically, but I am familiar with that because within my research there was certain things coming up. It was already long, so I didn't want to add to it, but I remember not too long ago there was controversy in a cover Beyonce did, I believe, where they lightened her skin tone, and that's happened recently with somebody that I follow on Instagram, Zendaya. I don't know if you are familiar with her. She came out and expressed how her skin was not only lightened, but they made her thighs smaller, and she put a post on Instagram saying like, hey, this isn't the cover that I approved. I don't like this photo. I like my original photo, and she wanted people to know that she wasn't behind the editor's standpoint. She wanted to make sure that her actual body was presented to people because she didn't want people to think that she wasn't happy with herself, and she is a promoter of self-esteem and loving yourself for who you are, and she didn't want people to think that of her.
Hi. I just think, can you go back to the slide where it had all the covers? I mean, all the
These ones?
the Vogue.
That one?
No,
The other one?
yeah, that one. I think it's interesting that all 4 models have very Eurocentric features. It's interesting that they wanted to make this statement like, oh, we're concerned about diversity, but they choose one very specific type of black woman.
Mm-hmm. Like
Of course,
all,
they're beautiful the way they are,
Yeah.
but it's only representing
I know,
a
like
very
they all
small
have like
percentage of
defined jawline, small nose.
very small nose.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like the whole first Black Barbie thing,
Uh-huh.
where it's just like they didn't really change the mold,
Exactly.
they just changed her colors.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that's interesting.
Yes, Asia.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing too, is like, you notice that they have like really straight hair, or their hair is like tied
Mhm.
back, so they're not showing their natural hair.
Exactly.
It's almost like you like curly or kinky.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've seen models showing their natural hair like that in your research.
I did occasionally. I had one model who often does, and pardon me, actress Lupita. She almost always wears her hair naturally, and I know at the Met Gala she had this very elaborate ponytail. I don't know if you guys saw it. It was probably like a good 2 feet tall. It was amazing.
Vogue, I think it was Vogue. They tried to give Katharine Hepburn credit for that, and like Lupita shut that down because it had nothing to do with Katharine. I mean Audrey Hepburn.
It's like similar with the recent hairstylings. I know one that I just read not too long ago was with Black China, where she wore her hair in bantu knots, and they tried to give credit to somebody else when they were like, no, this style has been around for many years, and African Americans normally wear this hairstyle. And also with like Kim Kardashian and the Kardashians wearing their hair in cornrows, and a lot of people saying like, oh, they invented the cornrows, but really African Americans have worn their hair like that all the time. Speaking of that, sorry if I'm blabbing, but I just read this really interesting article. It was after I read my paper, I was kind of upset. It was about movies that the characters were supposed to be African American and they were played by white people. And in one movie, it was, Sugar and Spice. That's what I remember her off the top of my head right now. I know, terrible example, but she was in it, and she was very, very fair-skinned, and she was still supposed to be depicted as an African American, and I guess they thought it would be convincing if they put her hair in cornrows, but she's like 10 times lighter than I am, and people knew that she wasn't truly African American, but they still try to do that within even movies. Anybody else want to keep going? No? All right. Thanks for your time.
And last but not least, we have Emma. So Emma is from Rhode Island. Where do you live, Johnston?
Yes.
Johnson.
Originally from New York.
So Emma is about to graduate also, I think.
Yeah, next semester maybe.
Another semester? Okay. She's talking to us today on minority fashion designers. You like this cover slide? Because you are sort of interested in the whole fashion design thing.
Okay, so, hi everybody, my name is Emma Cabrera. Like Dr. Welter said, I am a senior in the university, and today I'm going to be talking about minority fashion designers in the industry. Fashion design is, well, the fashion design industry in the United States is recognized for being diverse in the means that it works as a haven for various reasons, whether it's for sexual orientation, gender, race, from having piercings to tattoos. It's very diverse in those terms. However, the diversity divide is uneven. We lack a lot of ethnic fashion designers, and I researched on the reasons why this is happening and how the current minority fashion designers in the industry today have gone about to become so successful in the industry.
The minority group in the fashion industry today consists of ethnic groups such as African American, Asian American, Spanish, or Latinos. One thing that I found that many of these groups have done in order to become successful is by working their way up the ladder, which basically inclines coming to the United States, learning the language, and starting off as laborers, then going into becoming factory owners, manufacturers, retailers, and then eventually fashion designers. And this ladder can be as long as generations and as short as just one year or two or a couple, which was the case of Hang Feng. However, it was something that I included in my paper, but I can't include the presentation for time reasons. But I will be speaking about some designers that have taken similar paths, and this includes Carolina Herrera. Her path to success was not exactly working up the ladder, because she comes from a wealthy family from Venezuela, and she has always been part of the haute couture client, and she was recognized as one of the most elegant women for 10 years internationally, and she began designing clothes after having such reputation, and was approached by the editor of Vogue at the time, and she encouraged her to start her own line collection, in which she did, and soon after she gained many clients, and they were faithful to her collection. However, it was not until 1986 when Carolina Kennedy, the daughter of former President John Kennedy, married in one of her garments. She became internationally known after that, and her designs have been known to be essential or beautiful, or something that you want to wear for wedding occasions. Didn't realize I was speaking behind you the whole time. Sorry. Next, we have Jason Wu. He shares more of the traditional working up the ladder aesthetic that I am speaking of. However, this includes having connections and relations in the field. Sometimes this could boost up a step in the ladder. You don't have to start off as being a laborer, and you have to work your way up. Sometimes just having the connections and the relationship with people in the industry can boost you drastically to become successful. In Jason Wu's case, he was born in Taipei, Taiwan, and since the beginning it was no surprise that he was going to become a fashion designer. When he was a child, he sketched and drew. By his teenage years, he had designed his own collection of Barbie clothes, which he named Royalty Fashion. And in 2006, he came to Parsons to study, where he quickly got a job. And in 2009, Michelle Obama wore a dress designed by him, and soon after that, he became also international known. So it's like I'm saying, sometimes just having that publicity and that connection can boost you dramatically in the ladder. And sorry, I said 2006 he came to Parsons. I meant to say 2006 he had established his own label brand. And a similar story to Jason Wu, we have Tracy Reese. She was not born outside the United States, but she is of African descent. She was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1964. And also, since the beginning, she was expected to be a fashion designer. She didn't know it herself. At first she wanted to be an interior designer, but after having years of experience in sewing in her own household, she went to take a course during the summer when she was in high school at Parsons, the New School of Design, where she then realized that that was what she wanted to pursue. And then after she finished high school, she attended the school. She studied also, she got a job quickly. Again, the connections and the relationships helped. And she then began her own collections, which she started too, which are TR and Plenty. And throughout her journey, she has also opened a home collection and a footwear collection. And the First Lady also wore a design made by her, and which opened doors for her worldwide. So the lack of ethnic designers, I found, is not fault of the fashion industry itself, is rather the fault of the social background that these groups undergo. The first is that fashion for these groups, usually, like I mentioned, African, Spanish, or Latino or Asian, usually for these groups, being in the field of fashion is seen as an insecure profession, and that is seen even today. I even have friends that tell me, "So why are you in fashion? Like, why are we seeing that? You could be something else." And it's something that I see every day today. It's gradually becoming less and less of an insecure profession due to publicity and social media and the success of other ethnical designers in the field. But however, this is the main idea that these minority groups grow up with, that fashion is not the way to go, that's not the profession you want to pursue. Rather, you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or anything else that's more economically stable, I guess. Second, we have, and this could be dated back to the idea of fashion could be dated back to be in an insecure profession, to the education taught through school systems. In elementary school and forward, art is not seen as the major class to take. It's not seen as a priority. Often in the schools of the United States, the public schools in the United States, whenever there's lack of funding or resources, the first thing that they cut is the arts program, which then creates a domino effect for students that want to pursue that field for the rest of their career. Since they are not taking the art classes that they need in order to gain experience or even know if they want to pursue that topic. So they grow without knowing if they like that or not. And when they are in high school and applying for schools, they also don't have anything to show, because during schools they weren't able to build their portfolio, or let alone even know what a portfolio is, which was my case. I didn't know what that was. And then later on, we could see that another reason why these ethnic groups don't pursue to be fashion designers is due to financial struggles that many of these communities undergo. For example, an African American family makes about $33,000 a year. However, to go to Parsons or to go to FIT is about $50,000 to $60,000 a year, which is the whole income that these families are getting. And another thing that affects their decision is the psychological experience that they experience when attending a predominantly white school, which is the case for a lot of the schools here in the United States. The psychological effect that a minority student in a majority white school perceives is often heavy. Students of the mentioned groups usually undergo the pressures when attending institutional prestigious schools like fashion designer Tracy Reese. She said that when she went to Parsons, she was one of the only two African American students of her graduating class. So you could just imagine being the only person that looks different among a whole entire graduating class. Some of the psychological experiences that are experienced by these groups can vary from social loneliness to racial visibility and social invisibility, to class and cultural discomfort among white parents and administrators, the burden of explaining themselves to white people, to completing studies at a demanded school with minimal parent participation, and the burden of having to feel grateful all the time because this is an opportunity to them. However, it is still something where they have to work double as hard than any other student because they're undergoing these experiences. And next I have a chart of the numbers that some of the schools have. Like for example, for Parsons, we can see how this is affecting not only the fashion industry but also in college institution. In Parsons, there's only about 5% of African American students, 13% is Asian, 9% is Hispanic and Latino, whereas in the University of Ireland, which is not an art school, it's just another institutional school, we see the same low enrollment of students of different races. And that partakes for the same reasons that I mentioned. However, there are some changes being made by both industries and organizations. Like the School of Parsons, the New School of Fashion has made a program called Parsons Scholars, which focuses on helping high school students develop their portfolio and gain more knowledge on the art industry, as well as changing their application criteria so that students who show a less wow portfolio is able to go in as well as because they didn't have the opportunity to create the portfolios as other students might have. And similar thing can be seen in FIT, where middle school and high school students could go to FIT to build their portfolio and take classes and get information on how it is to be in the fashion industry. And also last year, Michelle Obama, she hosted the first, yeah. Sorry guys. The first fashion education workshop through her Reach Higher initiative. This was a workshop where the whole cast of Fashion Week, New York's Fashion Week attended, along with the 3 most celebrated African American designers, such as Tracy Reeves, Charles Harrison, and Maxwell Osborne. And they sat 12 high schools and 2 colleges down and spoke about their experiences in their career and the job factors and what path they took in order to become as successful as they are today. And automatically they could see the change in attitude in these students and their desire to learn more about it. Also in 2014, the Council of Fashion Designers in America celebrated Black History Month by honoring African American designers and their accomplishments. And here is a video of one of the designers that was illustrated. Hopefully it works. And you'll be able to see that from the video. This designer himself shares some of the factors that I mentioned that causes for minorities not to pursue the field. After it's all said, connect. Well, while I get this working, do you guys have any questions?
Can you go back to the slide where it shows the ethnic makeup of, yeah. That is so interesting about Parsons. 44% non-resident alien means that there are many people from around the world who want a career in fashion who are going and paying the full freight at Parsons.
Yeah.
It didn't say where they were from though.
No, it doesn't indicate where exactly they're from. But as I was doing my research, I found that 70% of international students are Asians. However, I did not know if they included that number to the Asian popularity or if they included it in the non-resident Asian one.
International students.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure about that, but I did see that the attitude for Asian Americans family or just Asian descendant families towards fashion has changed. It has opened so many doors for them, from designers Jason Wood, Alexander Wang. Just the visibility in the industry creates visibility for the whole country itself and creates jobs opportunities for them. So that alone has helped change the way that that specific ethnic group thinks about fashion. I'm trying to get this into this. Does anybody have any other questions?
For those videos that didn't work, if you guys want to send them to me, I'll put them up at Sakai so you can find out.
Me growing up in New York was a great experience. Growing up in the city, you had all these artists that are now in museums on the streets. So like, art was always the backdrop of the city. New York is pretty much and is my backbone of who Maxwell Osborne is. There's so much energy here that really inspires me throughout my day-to-day in life. And I don't think I could be anybody else if I wasn't from New York. I was always in arts, right? Like growing up, I always went to school for art and did all these things. And I never thought designing would be something I wanted to do. Ended up working retail at the Tommy Hilfiger store that they opened on West Broadway here in Soho. I guess being on the floor all the time, touching product and moving product and looking at it, you're like, oh,